an Excelsior Studios original production. This podcast discusses triggering subjects such as eating disorders, sexual assault, and suicidal thoughts. Listener discretion is advised. And throughout this episode, we will use AI to bring to life social media posts. While the voices you are hearing are fake, the words that they are reading are 100% real. And I will be sure to point out these AI voices as they come up so you don't get confused.
Today, I am grateful to learn more about PTSD from a sexual assault survivor, a mental health advocate, and a supporter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, whose goal is to reduce the rate of suicide. Thank you for joining me today, Megan. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, may I get to know you better? Can you share your story with me?
Absolutely. So I have chronic PTSD from being assaulted multiple times. It's a story that I'm usually quite public about. And I spend all my time advocating for mental health that I can. I do a lot of policy work in Indiana regarding mental health and suicide prevention and advocating for sexual assault survivors almost every moment that I can, every moment that I'm awake.
I know, kind of intense. This is how Megan Stoner, a 26-year-old advocate, speaker, and Indiana Politico, described herself on Mirror Talk, a podcast about mental health, in October of 2020. As she stated in that interview, she is pretty open about her history of mental health challenges and experiencing multiple sexual assaults. It's often the first thing she tells people about herself, and is a frequent subject of her social media posts. Sometimes she adds in other descriptors of herself, both on social media and to acquaintances she met in real life. She often described herself as a political consultant, a senior speechwriter for the governor of Indiana, a senior policy writer, and as a teacher. She has other quirks that make up her personality that she also frequently points out. For instance, her bio on one of her Twitter accounts reads, PTSD and sexual assault survivor, dog mom, sacred sexuality mentor, holding space for those who want to do this work. Her bio on another account, @tireddogmom, reads, Coco's mom, sexual assault survivor and mental health advocate, lover of Jesus and cupcakes, teaching kids, political junkie, probably at a concert. What's interesting is this is not how others who know her from the internet or in real life would describe her. So what's the first word you think of when you hear the name Megan Stoner?
Okay. First word that comes to mind, OMG. Or even like first phrase that comes to mind is, here we go.
Insane.
Smart.
Con artist.
Liar.
Stinky.
2 words come to mind, sociopath and narcissist.
A scammy bitch.
Deceit, but also empathy.
I would say monster. To me, she is a monster.
Yeah.
In every aspect of the word, the girl is a nightmare.
I mean, I guess those aren't the types of things that you lead with when advocating for yourself publicly. But this dichotomy, the contrast between her over-the-top social media persona and her antics behind the scenes, this has been what's made Megan somewhat infamous in her community and certain online communities throughout the years, since at least 2014. But this all changed on April 26th of 2023, when Megan was arrested on 9 felony charges of fraud, theft of between $750,000 and $50,000, and corrupt business dealings. I'm Amanda, and this is Don't Waste This Effing Podcast, the story of Megan Stoner. Don't Waste This Podcast is a completely independent podcast. It is written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Amanda. Because of this, you won't hear any intrusive advertisements interrupting your listening experience. You're welcome. To support this independent venture, please like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, retweet if you're listening on X, and rate me 5 stars and subscribe if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, consider sharing with a friend if you think that they would like to hear this story. Finally, before we get into the episode, if you would like to start your own podcast and tell a story just like this one, I've created a course that teaches you how to do that from start to finish. The link for that will be in the description below. Now let's get into the show.
Justice is finally being served. Megan E. Stoner's arrest for fraud, stealing, and lying is long overdue. 9 charges for corrupt business influence, fraud where the loss is between $750,000 and $50,000, and theft. The bond is set at $25,000. These charges are on top of a pending civil collection and a pending criminal misdemeanor for an OWI.
That is the AI voice of Chloe Anagnos, a local Indiana Politico who had been following Megan's antics for years. Megan forged campaign data when volunteering as an intern for Chloe on a race she was running back in 2016.
I first met Megan when working on a few campaigns in Hamilton, Marion County in 520. She would have just graduated high school then and was always around the parade circuit volunteering. When I worked a convention race in 2016, she reached out to ask if she could help. I said yes and asked her to call delegates from the 3rd Congressional District. Approximately 450 phone calls, and needed to know if they planning on going to the convention, who they were voting for, etc. She gave me back the Excel sheet and marked didn't answer voicemail in every column. That is statistically impossible. I was Midwest nice, and instead of calling her out, I ignored future requests to volunteer.
That's the AI voice of Chloe again. Upon Megan's arrest, Chloe felt compelled to share what she had been tracking for years publicly in a Twitter thread, which went kind of viral.
I think what was so frustrating was that you have people who are actively putting in the work to get their person elected. And you work long hours and you volunteer for a really long time before you can kind of make your way into getting paid to do political work. And you have someone like Megan who is writing off the backs of people who actually put in the work. And so it was very frustrating to me to see her claim that she was a consultant and claim that, she was going and supporting Donald Trump places. And it's like, girlfriend, you're not doing anything. Like, you're showboating and you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
That's Chloe's actual voice. I know. The AI sounds super realistic, right? So that's why Chloe had started following Megan. And here's what she had found in regards to Megan's newfound legal troubles.
Based on the timeline on my case, I believe these charges are for the rent scam she started in 2021. From August to December 2021, it is believed that she still had the keys to a home she rented, but was evicted from for lack of payment. She preyed on people, young families, and travel nurses in Facebook groups looking to rent in Hamilton County. She showed interested parties the home as if it was hers, collected a deposit between $1,500 to $1,800, and then blocked the renter on Facebook. She apparently did this between 20 to 50-ish times. In Facebook groups like Fisher's Chatter, Pendleton Chatter, etc., there are hundreds of people warning others about her rent scam and how they were new victims. One woman I saw couldn't give her kids presents in December 2021. The latest I've heard of was left homeless. I know what you're probably wondering. Why explain this online? Seems petty. It's because Megan has been lying and defrauding people and organizations since at least 2016 and has been getting away with it.
And that was the AI voice again, reading from Chloe's infamous Twitter thread. So clearly, Megan was a threat to her community, having preyed on vulnerable members of the community for years, as Chloe laid out. But there's another reason Chloe felt compelled to tell this story.
I don't have cable, so I just find it really entertaining, her entire story. And she acts like a cartoon character, or she acts like someone that's in a sitcom that's just always doing crazy things. But I think what makes it so entertaining to myself and, to just other people is that she is a real life person doing these things and acting this way.
And I know that sounds weird, but Chloe's not the only person that feels that way. In fact, quite the opposite. Chloe's Twitter thread was so important because it caught the attention of a lot of people who felt the same way. People that we didn't know about.
I think I saw a Facebook post with an article stating, woman from Fishers is arrested for a rental fraud scam, and somebody posted it in a group and was like, hey guys, if you know, you know. So I found Chloe's thread when I just decided to, look on, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter to see what else was being said.
That's the voice of Alex Brewster, who is actually not from Indiana. She's all the way on the West Coast. And here's the kicker. She's never met Megan in person. They interacted pretty much exclusively on Facebook from 2016 to 2019 in a group called the Spice Girls, which was a Facebook group for young women to connect online about issues that they were facing in their lives and develop friendships. But I want to point this out because I think it is so telling if you are confused why people would care to look up Megan's story on social media post-arrest. Or, quite frankly, why they would even be posting about her arrest in the first place. Because let's be honest, Megan was charged with pretty low-level stuff. Yes, it's 9 felonies, and I know $750,000 to $50,000 is a ton of money, but people don't usually pay attention to fraud schemes for such low dollar amounts. Fraud schemes that people really pay attention to are typically in the millions to tens of $1 million ranges. Think Bernie Madoff or Tom Petters. Let me put it to you this way. I graduated from high school with just over 700 classmates, a little over 10 years ago. Statistically speaking, a few of my classmates probably have been arrested by now, and I've never heard about it. If I did, I probably wouldn't rush to Facebook or Twitter or TikTok to see if people are posting about it, unless that person was really peculiar. And that's kind of the case with Megan. People were really curious about her. And when they found out about her case, they felt the need to go digging for more and share their stories about her.
I always sort of figured that what we experienced in the group was probably going to be evidence for a future FBI case or something, because I was so hooked on the idea that she was either going to get better or spiral just like wildly and do something noteworthy.
So this is the type of impression Megan leaves on people that she meets, even online. Definitely noteworthy, and people could anticipate that more might be coming. So they followed her antics, sometimes quietly, sometimes making their presence known, and they mainly followed her on her social media, which was really easy for them because Megan was a prolific social media poster. I'll read you a few of her notable posts, and this will be done using an AI rendition of her voice.
It feels like it took everything in me, but I was able to dress up for a meeting tonight. It has been a crazy 24 to 48 hours. My boyfriend and I were both in different states yesterday. He covered for me while I went to Ohio to learn more about my body and ways to be comfortable with it. He went to DC for me for 4 of my political clients. I totally had forgotten that we were hosting a dinner party tonight for some colleagues. I am so grateful to have a significant other in my life that so deeply cares for me and doesn't mind helping me cover my various hats that I wear and doesn't mind making dinner on short notice for 7 adults. There's something about wearing a suit and getting out of the Tesla for a meeting. The response, "You are not the person I thought that would be getting out of the Tesla. Work hard, kick ass, take names." So confused on time zones, but I'm absolutely enjoying my time away. Flying private ruins you. Thanks to Southwest for getting me on the next flight after I missed mine due to 2 medical emergencies and an emergency landing. Today was such a rough day. My students thought it was appropriate to make several TikTok videos of me. I feel gutted. Education may not be for me. Not sure I'm going back in the AM.
So on their surface, there's nothing that inherently weird about some of these posts. It seems like an average 25-year-old girl, actually better than average, right? I mean, she drives a Tesla. She's a high-powered political consultant. She's flying private. She has a boyfriend or a fiance who she might live with. Who can step in and take over for her clients sometimes. She has a dog named Coco who she loves. Megan's kind of got it all going on. Some of these get a little bit sketchy. Like, for instance, the photo she uses on her post about being on vacation seems to be a stock photo. But this was kind of her average post. She would post these things every so often, and, some of her other posts look more like diary entries where she would post about fights with her mom or really graphic, intimate details about herself.
Nourishing my body, because it needs it. It deserves it. Being fully present with my meal this evening, this weekend, nothing shy of a disaster. I had a mini car accident Friday. Car is still drivable. The part didn't arrive today as planned. We have an out-of-town guest arriving in 10 hours. I had to call friends to help me move the furniture. I had to call friends to help me with 2 dog schedules tomorrow. All the while, the boyfriend is handling 2 crises for me on the East Coast. It's been a hell of a day, and I'm praying tomorrow is smoother. Whoever has spent hundreds of dollars to send me adult toys this week and slashed my parents' tires while my dad is still in the hospital. The joke is over. Your identity will be found out soon enough. Thankful for law enforcement helping out in these matters. It's the harassment of my family, and I will not continue. Never ever discount the impact trauma has on the body. Still struggling with being able to keep things down. My doctor and I have been doing blood work every other day to make sure my numbers aren't off. Friday and Monday they've been off, so I'm getting fluids for a few hours today, praying this part of my life is almost over. My thigh is incredibly swollen, and the pressure on the issues hurts like nothing in this world. I'm trying to believe there's a possibility of this being solved without it being surgery. It felt good to go to a chiropractor today who isn't worried about me making a false allegation against him and actually cares about my care. Trying to explain to a male coach why doing body work when I'm on my period is a bad idea. Send help.
So, as you can tell, she posted a lot. But she also tried to get herself into media interviews, like you heard the podcast interview at the beginning of this episode. And also this clip.
My name is Megan, and since I work in politics, I snack a lot. Granola bars, gummy bears, it just really depends on the day. Whenever I'm working at the State House, sometimes those are 10 to 12 hour days, and we obviously can't get outside during that time, and it's hard to order in. I've asked many of my mentors and state reps and so on and so forth how they've incorporated eating, because obviously a lot of them are skinny, and I've asked them, how is it that you can maintain a healthy eating schedule in the one of the most hectic careers? They've said, you just got to make time for it, just like you have to make time to see your kids, you have to make time to eat. I wish it didn't cost so much. I think one of the issues is it costs so much to eat healthier. I can go get a hamburger for $1, but I can't get strawberries for $1. They're $4 to $5 at the grocery store. So that's always a hassle too.
So, as I'm sure you can tell, there's kind of a lot going on here. And the point of me putting all of these clips together is not to make fun of Megan, although some of these posts, you cannot deny, are super funny. Obviously, nobody wants to hear about people having medical emergencies, but I'm sorry, there's no way you didn't crack a smile at that sex toys thing. Not only is it absurd that someone would spend hundreds of dollars on sex toys to send to Megan to embarrass her in some way when she presumably lived alone, but for her to post those on social media is objectively really funny. And it's posts like these that are what kept people following her and coming back for more for years. My friend Justin put it the best. He said that Megan Stoner was his favorite reality show. And I can't think of a better way to characterize it. Similarly to how Chloe said that she was like a cartoon or sitcom character. Megan was putting posts like this out about herself for other people and she was, she friended a lot of people on Facebook and, had an open Twitter profile for the most part. She was putting this out there for people to see, and people liked the content. And where this gets dicey is there are certain people who could kind of see through the bullshit more than others. For instance, people with a political background could very easily see through her political posts. Justin puts it the best.
I remember one of the most absurd lies I saw around that time was when there was the whole big fight over the Speaker of the House, and the members of Congress ended up being sworn in at 3 a.m. And she posted that she had to stay up all night just to watch one of her clients be sworn in. Like she was some sort of consultant on that race. And and I was talking to a few friends who like actually are now legitimate political consultants, and they were like, it's so absurd that she would have been the consultant on a political race, but she's posting like she is. At the same time, she's posting all about all this crazy, sexual stuff. She was not a DC political consultant that would fly out for a day and be back in time for dinner. That wasn't her. And she was trying to portray that she was some sort of, Olivia Pope type character.
Political circles are small. People know people. People know who's working on whose campaigns. Meghan posting shamelessly that she had political consulting clients in Washington, D.C., that she was flying back and forth for, when everybody in Indiana, I mean, she was excommunicated from even interning or volunteering or walking in a parade. Acting like she got people elected to Congress and attended their swearing-in ceremonies. Politicos know that this is absurd, but Meghan didn't only communicate with politicos online. And so some people, while they might have been wary, they didn't understand the full extent to which she was lying. And there were other posts where she was lying. And again, people could tell, but not everyone. Justin breaks it down really well right here.
She didn't have a boyfriend named Jake. We know that. That was fake. She didn't even have 8 friends to have over for dinner.
This is the post Justin's referencing. I'll put it back in here for your listening pleasure. And again, this is Meghan reading with an AI voice generator.
He went to DC for me for 4 of my political clients. I totally had forgotten that we were hosting a dinner party tonight for some colleagues. I am so grateful to have a significant other in my life that so deeply cares for me and doesn't mind helping me cover my various hats that I wear and doesn't mind making dinner on short notice for 7 adults.
And I remember she posted a picture of one plate, and it was this like grilled chicken salad, and it was like, okay, that's not what you normally eat. You usually eat Jack's Donuts. Like, I'm not even being mean, but literally every word of that was a lie.
So this is what drew people in. This is what kept friend groups that live on opposite sides of the country from each other talking. This would be one of the topics that they would sometimes cover when catching up, if it had been a couple months since they had spoken. Just analyzing these little things. No big deal, right? But in the months leading up to Meghan's arrest, people could tell that something had shifted because she was getting much more, we'll say, reckless online.
I actually remember a few conversations that happened in the few months leading up to her arrest where it was like, it feels like something big is coming because things are getting to a level of absurd that when we started following this, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, like her lies were much.
And something big came indeed. Again, on April 26th of 2023, Meghan turned herself in when a warrant was out for her arrest for 9 felony counts of theft, fraud, and corrupt business dealings. I'm sure by now you're wondering what her Facebook posts looked like post-arrest. I'm sure you think that they were crazy. And what's interesting is at first they weren't. Her first post was a weird selfie that she took of herself with a bag of Jack's Donuts, a local Indianapolis donut shop. We believe she took this photo and posted it while on her way to the jail. In the selfie, she's wincing, and depending on who you ask, they may assume that she was either in pain or joking around by taking a silly photo. At the point of this post, she had not yet publicly acknowledged the arrest warrant online. She was actually pretty nonchalant about the ordeal for about a week, which might sound surprising to you. I mean, it's 9 felony counts. That's a lot. But a clue as to why she was able to keep her calm is that this actually wasn't Megan's first run-in with the law. In fact, if you check out her My Case, which is the online record system of the Indiana court system, Megan has a pretty decent rap sheet for a 25-year-old. There's civil judgments dating back to the time Megan would have been in high school. There's multiple evictions, and quite an impressive list of driving infractions. To be honest, I've never heard of someone with as many speeding tickets as Megan. Actually, at the time of the warrant being put out for the rent scam, Megan had 2 pending trial dates for the next few weeks. One was for an eviction case filed by her landlord for non-payment, and another was for an OWI case. OWI is Indiana's terminology for a DUI, or driving under the influence. Megan claimed she was charged with the OWI for having cough syrup in the front seat of her car when she crashed it around 3 in the morning on her birthday. She later implied in a Facebook post that someone from a local megachurch had run her off the road in response to a podcast Megan had started to expose that Megan. It didn't take Megan long to start posting some Easter eggs alluding to her current situation. On Instagram, she posted what looked like a textbook about trauma and recovery.
Have I been sitting in the same spot for 3 hours reading? Yes. Do I care? Nope. It's been weeks and weeks of being on the go. It feels so good to be sitting and soaking in my Saturday.
But eventually, Megan broke her silence on the situation at hand with a post on Twitter.
After my worst week on planet Earth, I wanted to break my silence. I've been through the worst part of life this last week, but in the moment of the worst parts, I found my true tribe. I found the people who truly care for me and will literally drop what they're doing to help me. Maybe it's literally talking to me on the phone until I fall asleep, or taking the dogs out for me on a moment's notice. As painful as this last week has been, I've sure learned a lot. I've learned that those we think will be there for us often aren't. And those we least expect step up and show out, you know who you are. And for this, I'm forever grateful.
And again, that's an AI rendition of Megan's voice. Anytime you hear Megan reading, it's AI. But notice how interesting that point is. She doesn't directly address what happened. She doesn't apologize to people she had wronged. She didn't even mention that she had been arrested. She just said that she had a bad week, the worst week of her life. But judging by the few social media posts, you'd probably be right to guess that she posted a lot about having bad weeks on social media. So this post isn't exactly atypical, but her next few posts were.
Knowing there's a group on Facebook that is designed to cyberbully me. It's water off my back at this point. It doesn't bother me. I'm enjoying my chocolate cake just the same. It feels weird having 1,500 people picking apart my life, but I'm still standing and eating chocolate cake. Enjoy trying to tear me down because it's not working.
That post was just one day after the first post that the AI voice of Megan read. So 1 day separation between those 2 posts. And you'll never guess this, but that post is accompanied by a photo of a piece of chocolate cake. And this post marks a turning point because this is when Megan starts to get adversarial, and it only gets worse from here, but you'll have to stay tuned for next time to learn more about that. And to a degree, I don't blame Megan for getting adversarial at this point. She wasn't lying, maybe slightly exaggerating, but there was a Facebook group dedicated to exposing her scams at this point. And today, at the time of recording, that group still has 1,300 people in it. And people post in it fairly frequently. In the early days after Megan's arrest, this group was used to spread awareness about Megan's schemes and learn about the depth of Megan's fraudulent behavior. And as those of us in that group, as we learned, Megan had allegedly done a lot more than just the rent scam. And I know I pointed out the other crimes that she had been convicted of or charged with earlier in the episode, but there were even more stories of shady behavior from Megan detailed in this Facebook group, some of it even worse than the crimes that she had been charged with. There were also Twitter accounts dedicated to exposing her schemes, and Twitter spaces were held publicly so that people could come and tell their stories about their experiences with her. I want to be clear, I don't blame Megan for being upset about any of this. I would be mortified if I were in her shoes. However, where there's smoke, there's fire, and at the very least, it started to come out that Megan was likely not telling the truth about a lot of aspects of her life. For instance, her job. Nobody could pin down what her job was. Megan posted about her time being a political consultant, flying on private planes between Washington, D.C. and Indianapolis. However, people were not convinced that this was the truth, like you heard Chloe talk about earlier. That it infuriated Chloe that Megan claimed to be a political consultant when there was no evidence of her being that. Megan also posted about being a teacher, telling a compelling story that she had been bullied by her students. I believe there was even a news article written about that story. However, there was not a ton of evidence of her being a teacher either. But Megan had to be getting money from somewhere. I mean, she drove a Tesla. Actually, people in the group had counted. She drove 4 separate Teslas. And she lived in Fishers, which is a wealthy suburb of Indianapolis, in a 3-bedroom townhome, presumably all to herself and her dog Coco. Then there's the fiancé, Jake. She posted about him frequently, but she never posted photos of him. What was his deal? All of these questions are what I seek to answer throughout this podcast, as well as to explain some of the most scandalous schemes she ran and the story of how our community came together to catch her. There's one more part of this I haven't mentioned to you yet. I've only read her public social media posts, but there's a lot more that she does on social media in private. For years we learned, and by we, I mean the community of people that had been following Megan on the down low for years, that Megan spent hours per day messaging people on social media. This was basically her full-time job, because as far as we can tell, she didn't have a full-time job. Ironically, the group of people who gathered around and began following her intensely on social media ended up being people that she had messaged for donations for years. Donations to her classroom, to political campaigns, and mental health charities for years. And as the summer went on of 2023, she ramped up these social media messages, asking for help with bail money and for legal funds. She was shameless. There's no way to describe what she was doing other than to call it digital panhandling. And the community of people that were in these Facebook groups and following these Twitter pages felt compelled to stop her from continuing to do this. We didn't want more people to get scammed. But she kept going. And eventually it got to the point where she was running from the police, begging for money online to keep running from the police. So members of the community decided to take things into their own hands, find out where she was hiding, and bring her into the police. They also worked together to help her victims who were trying to piece together the crimes that she had committed that involved them. For a weird vigilante Facebook group, it was kind of cool how we all came together. This podcast isn't necessarily just a story about Megan Stoner. It's a story about how a community of people from unlikely places came together online to help each other and to seek justice. So this brings me to explain myself. Why am I the one making this podcast? Why do I care anyways? Well, hi, I'm Amanda, and to make a very long story short, I found out about Megan because she began messaging me for money in 2016-2017 time. I served as the chairman of the Minnesota College Republicans in 2016-2017, and while I was doing that, I met some of my very good friends that were involved with the Indiana College Republicans. We became Facebook friends, and shortly after that, Megan also friended me on Facebook. She was involved with Indiana College Republicans at the time, and I accepted her request. And that's pretty typical of youth politics, so I didn't think anything of her request. She began messaging me a few times to donate like $5 to her county commissioner race, or it was something like that. And at that point, I decided to unfriend her. And messaging people for political donations like that isn't that atypical either, but I was in college at the time, and if I was going to pitch in $5 to a race, it would have been for a race near me, not in a state that I had never been to at the time, and to a girl that I had never met. But I'm not doing an entire podcast to expose this girl because I'm annoyed she messaged me for political contributions almost 10 years ago. I'm also not a journalist. I don't play one on TV, to quote Chloe. So I'm not really seeking to report this in the traditional sense. And really, this podcast isn't to expose Megan at all. But I feel as though you deserve an explanation as to why I'm putting all of this out there. And I can break it down into two main reasons. The first is that this is just a really interesting story. And quite frankly, it needs to be told. Everybody I've ever told bits and pieces of this story to becomes fascinated and wants to know more. I mean, there's a reason 1,300 of us became enveloped by this saga in the summer of 2013, or 2023. The second reason comes from a discussion I had with a pastor talking about Megan's story. In the height of her run from the police, I spoke to this pastor because I actually felt uncomfortable with the Facebook group and the Twitter spaces. People could post things that were really cruel, and I also knew Megan's crimes were extremely cruel as well, but I felt conflicted. And I want to tell you what this pastor told me. He explained to me that by warning people about scammers like Megan, it's actually an act of loving our neighbor. He told me that gossip is too far. Like, if I were to find pleasure in talking about her story, that would maybe be a sign that I'm taking things too far. And I must say, I'm sorry to that pastor and to God, but there have been times that I've really gotten joy out of speaking about this story, probably crossing a line to gossip. However, the point still stands that to prevent someone from doing evil unto another is to love my neighbor. And as you'll see throughout this series, people have doubts about whether or not Megan will ever stop scamming. My hope in putting out this podcast is that if she gets out of jail and starts scamming again, at the very least, there will be a record of her story that's publicly available, so people could listen and draw their own conclusions and decide for themselves. That way, if she scams again, they'll have a resource to help understand what happened or what could happen. And it's my deepest hope that she gets out of jail and never scams another soul. However, again, since I'm not sure about that, this is my way of taking things into my own hands while simultaneously providing entertainment. I don't know if there's anybody else who knows this story in the depths of it to the degree that I do that has the time to put something like this together. So if I don't think that this would get out any other way. There's that component as well. Again, if you believe that sinning is the worst thing that someone can do, and sinning affects the sinner worse than it hurts anyone else, then it is actually an act of love to stop that person from sinning. So really, for me, this podcast is an act of love, not only towards the community, but to Megan. and also to the people that she scammed who are eager to tell their stories and to, help potentially save future victims. So that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit about why I made this podcast. I'm so excited to bring this story to you and keep putting out these episodes. There will be a new episode out every single Thursday. If you want